and you'd be bang on there. I did, you know, I got to the end of my schooling time and I was still without a bit of direction and cause. I mean, when I'd been in school in Gisborne, I'd wanted to leave early and go into forestry, of all things, because that's how you made the big bucks in Gisborne. So I ended up going away to school to Palmerston North, and then my parents were fairly insistent that I go to university, and I had not a clue about what I wanted to do. So in an act of rebellion, I just chose the furthest university away, which happened to be Otago, and I went down there and spent 2 years discovering that I didn't really want to do a BA. But it was towards the second half of my second year down there that I actually decided that, you know, I'd always had this desire to work in television. I just didn't have the confidence. I didn't think that someone from Gisborne was allowed to or qualified. And so it took me a while just to get a bit of head of steam up. And then I applied for broadcasting school and I didn't get in. I missed the cut. And I thought, actually, no, I'm pretty determined by that stage. I'd made my mind up. So I started badgering someone at broadcasting school. I'm just trying to remember who I used to call almost every second day. And by that time, I'd gone and done a whole lot of voluntary work at a local TV station. So I got them to write me a reference. And they ended up, someone pulled out of one of the interviews. And they said, well, if you can be here, I think it was like on a Thursday at 4 o'clock, you can have an interview. So I had long hair. I cut my hair off. I got in my station wagon. I slept in my station wagon. I drove from Dunedin to Christchurch and I had my interview and I greased and bribed and blagged my way in, basically.
So what about those couple of years with us? How do you remember those?
Oh, they were fantastic because I'd finally found something that I really wanted to do. And so I suddenly had no problem working late into the night and getting up early and you know, just throwing everything into it. It didn't feel like study to me. It was you know, hands-on, tangible. You were producing things, and it was an exciting place to be because you were surrounded by people that were, you know, like-minded. I've still got friends from my year class, people I see around from time to time, and you know, it's not just that you are learning and working your way to an education qualification that will hopefully set you up into a gig. It's that you are forming these networks of people around you and you can bounce ideas off them and you can learn as much from some of your classmates as you can from the course.
So where did you do your internship?
I did my final piece for broadcasting school around comedy, and within that I designed a student television show based on my experiences at Otago University. And then I sold that pilot concept back to Channel 9 in Dunedin, and I made them employ me as the intern to go down there. So my first gig was starting my own show that I'd made as part of my, it's the 700 project, isn't it? The final piece of the puzzle. And so I managed to make that work for me.
But first, the TV show that's sparking a lot of interest and a fair bit of embarrassment in Dunedin. It's on a program called Cow on the city's local Channel 9, and it involves chasing varsity students as they emerge from foreign flats to scamper home.
It goes to air on Dunedin's Channel 9 on a program for scarfies called Cow. Capturing the essence of student life minus the study.
We pretty much discovered that everyone had a fairly sick sense of humour and the more disgusting...
Well, similar to ours, really.
Yeah.
So it fitted quite nicely.
Well, the rule of thumb is if we laugh at it, then everyone else will find it funny.
Well, yeah.
Well, we hope.
It's attracting a cult following.
That's pretty funny, eh? But I'm not going to get caught out.
My goal is to be on the Walk of Shame this semester.
No one's safe.
This isn't your room.
Not even presenter Marcus Sontag, busted earlier in the year.
This is a pretty bizarre thing to be doing on a Sunday morning. I mean, it's a little bit sick.
A little bit, yeah.
I suppose. Yeah. Definition of sick.
Yeah, rightio.
So, you have a good night last night?
Oh, yeah, I had a good night last night. Oh, yeah.
Well, we're therapy at the end of the day, aren't we?
We are. You know, I mean, they've had a shock. They've woken up the next morning. They've realised they've had an absolute Barry Crocker. And we're just there to, you know, a bit of counselling.
Just who needs the counselling's debatable, but for these guys, the Walk of Shame could be a step on the road to fame. Michael Turner, 3 News.
We filmed for about 5 or 6 weeks before the show went to air, and so no one had a clue what we were doing. And I was like, I don't know if this is going to work. So I'd get out early on a Saturday and Sunday morning and go out, and it just worked unbelievably well. Like, we just caught so many people each morning. I could go out one morning every 4 weeks because I'd have enough people to spread over 4 weeks worth of programming. But then a funny, remarkable thing happened. The first show went to air, and it spread like wildfire through the campus and through Otago, and it got very popular very quickly. And that single-handedly, overnight, changed the techniques that were being adopted in some of the, say, university students pursuing other bedrooms other than their own, and the fact, in the way that we could not catch any woman after that point. The woman got smart and took the guys home to their place, and so that the guys had to walk home, and we created this sort of level of fear in amongst the campus at Otago.
So you went into, I mean, you trained as a television production, you were in a television production stream with us,
yes.
But actually that wasn't really where you ended up, was it? I mean, obviously with Car TV you were shooting there, but after that you went into presenting quite quickly, didn't you?
Well, I actually went into radio. So I've and then when I was the intern, to prop up my internship, I ended up working briefly as a journalist as well on Channel 9. So I've had a little dabble in all three. From Cow TV, I moved to the Edge of all things. So I ended up moving to Hamilton, and I produced the Edge FM's Breakfast when it was just JJ Feeney and a guy called Jason Reeves, who were both still in radio. I didn't quite fit their sense of humour or style. I did spend about a year or so there. It was a lot of fun, and I learned a hell of a lot about radio and how it worked. And from there, I ended up moving to Auckland, where a radio station called Channel Z put me in on nights, doing the overnight, and that's where I cut my teeth as a radio announcer. And then I slowly worked back and ended up at nights, and then I think I ended up on Drive there. And then a guy from he worked at MTV in the UK called Andrew Schusterman. Shusty moved back, and he started a music television on Channel 4 at the time, and they changed that to become C4 TV, Channel 4 music television. And he I didn't even ask for an audition. Everyone else in Auckland did. And then he approached me and said, "Do you want to try out for it?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." And he gave me the main role, so I became the main face with Jackie Brown, and we spent a number of years, I think from about 2004 onwards, having all sorts of fun doing wild live music television.
Because he's a former broadcasting, Andrew Schusterman's a former B schooler as well, I think.
Yeah. Oh, he loves holding up his credentials about the fact that he was #1 night in Wellington between some demographic and certain age group. I don't know, he's got some little claim to fame he always hangs on to from his radio days. And then around about the same time, another couple of broadcasting school students who were the year below me in radio, a guy by the name of Ben Boyce and Jamie Linehan, were doing a radio show called Pulp Sport on radio. And they wanted to translate it to television. And they'd done a pilot, and the pilot was bloody awful. It was terrible. In fact, they couldn't even sit in the room with me when they played me the pilot. But they knew that I'd had experience doing Cow TV, and they wanted to sort of bring a bit of that flavour to it. And so the three of us got together, and we made this pilot, and we begged and borrowed and stole equipment to put everything together. In fact, we formed a production company and called it Shonky Productions, because most of the things were stolen out of radio stations to make that series work. And we got it off the ground, and Sky TV agreed to broadcast the first season, and then I think we ended up making 4 seasons in it. It worked so well that we ended up moving through to TV3, and then my television stuff had started to take off at that point. So I'd finished at Channel Z. The C4 stuff had started to take off for me, and we sort of parted ways. And then Ben obviously teamed up with Jono from The Rock and took off in that direction. The funny thing was like we made that show in my backyard in a shed out the back, the first 3 seasons. We spent more on our rap party for the first season than we did on the entire series. Like everything was big, borrowed and stolen. I'd edited it all myself. We did a deal with Apple Computers to borrow this thing called a G3, and I had to learn how to use Final Cut Pro software to make it all happen. And we ended up winning Qantas Media Comedy of the Year, and it really upset some of the big players because we're up against like Brotown and serious comedies. And we took out the award, and it ruffled a few feathers.
How did Fish of the Day get started?
Right, so fish of the day, where do I end up? Well, see, no, Tony, you're still missing huge chunks out of this, mate.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's probably boring.
You're older than I thought.
Well, I did C4 for a while, and then I just wanted a bit more of an adventure, and I'd never really done an OE. So then I jumped to Prime and got the Getaway Travel Show, and that was a good way to travel around the world. I went to places like China, I went down to Antarctica and stayed at Scott Base. And then that leapt into a show called Extraordinary Kiwis, where I had to go and find 10 interesting New Zealanders and try their jobs out for a week. And that saw me doing everything from motocross riding to training with Dan Carter for a week and doing all sorts. So I did some shows at Prime, did other little bits and pieces as a presenter. And then I'd moved back into radio, and I'd sort of was DJing at the time, and it had started to take off, and I got offered a gig at George FM. And it had always just been a hobby, but then it became a main source of income as the TV work got really light and dried up. And I used that to sort of springboard back into radio, and then started doing quite well at that, and got poached to go to More FM Drive. So I ended up on More FM Network, More FM Drive. They approached me about 4 times. I really didn't want to go because I enjoyed playing my own music at George, but I finally went, okay, maybe it's time to be a grown-up. And while I was there, I did it was nothing against the workplace or the hours or the people there, but the repetition of music and everything just ate at my soul, and I kind of just had enough. So I got offered the breakfast gig back at George FM, and I went back there, but that format had changed as well. MediaWorks had taken it over, and they'd really come in and sort of put their presence on the playlist, and suddenly I was seeing a lot of the same repetition that was killing my will to live at More FM. So around about that time, a friend of mine had worked for 20 years in the Pacific, making blue chip high-end documentaries for the BBC and Discovery and those platforms. And so him and I got together and we said, right, well, New Zealand actually needs, let's find another angle to make a fishing show. But we always wanted to make a show that while it would play in New Zealand, had international ambitions.
And that's 4 seasons you've done now?
Yeah, we're just starting season 5. We've got to try and power out a season now. We've had so we film half in New Zealand, half in the Pacific, and when COVID kicked in, we lost a huge amount of time, and we lost obviously all our Pacific, which was quite heartbreaking because the season was looking incredible. I mean, it's designed the show to do exactly what I wanted to do, which was to go fishing and diving, which was my whole childhood, and so it was just reconnecting with that, and to do it through the Pacific. It didn't really even matter that we weren't really making money or anything out of the show. It was just a chance to go to the Solomons and dive on World War II wrecks and go to Fiji and Rarotonga and get on board boats that you'd never be able to afford and go to crazy places in Tahiti and do things like that.
Yeah. Look, if you think about young people today looking to get into this business, and I know there's a lot has happened in the last year or so, and in the last month or so, in terms of the effects on media. Do you have advice for young people who are looking at media or looking at getting into screen or television work?
Oh, where to start? I mean, the upheaval and flux and change that's happened in media has happened for a long time. Probably the advent of radio would have freaked out newspaper prints back in the day, and then television would have come along and freaked out everyone else again, and everyone sort of found their place and found their meaning. And then, of course, the internet was the great disruptor of the last decade or longer, and everyone is still sort of finding their place in that. But it has opened up, more opportunities and more ability for people to see the content you're producing. It's just been able to find a clear channel to get that clear message out, and that's where some of the skills in broadcasting skill are so important. That craft of storytelling and production and getting your message across. So there's to be able to grasp those things puts you head and shoulders above any other content producer, and just trying to find, who knows where the cards are going to land over the next wee while. It's fascinating watching the likes of the New Zealand Herald going to a subscriber base. They've just posted new numbers on that. They're claiming that they're up around 70 27,000 people paying for subscription services. There's been all of their models through the big broadcasters are changing as everything does, and so there's always going to be a need for people to see and hear things. It's just how that gets produced might look a little bit different to what we're seeing today.
Okay, Clarke, look, that's been great. Thank you for talking to me. Who knows? You might be able to come down sometime and talk to our students.
Have a few words. Yeah, we're allowed to travel again.
Indeed, that's right. Thanks a lot.